What I'd like to talk to you about is as follows. New film, title, Vortex Technology in Healing. What happened to me is before I was given the ability to work with people with the USR, but after I'd done my traditional shamanic training, I was at a camp which was organised by a group called Green and Away. So if you put in greenandaway.org you can see what they do. And this was a herbalist conference, around about 100 herbalists were there, and I was sitting with my shaman colleague David the Shaman Chef talking about healing, and this guy with a beard walks past us, just overhears what we're talking about, turns around, faces us and says, "Have you come across the blue vortex?" And with that question hanging in the air, he then gives us a smile, turns around and walks on his way. Now I never realised that that single question would lead to so much. So great gratitude to you out there, mate, and I don't even remember your name, but great gratitude indeed. So the very first vortex I was introduced to, which is now the cornerstone of my practice of the USR, I noticed that some people when they train they end up using the blue vortex, other people have their own different modalities. It doesn't matter. So the way it works for me is that I see the blue vortex manifesting in the scening of the orange room. So what I'll do is I'll show you a selection of photographs. So here come a couple of photographs of the blue vortex, give you some artist's impressions of it. So what I see effectively is an inverted cone in the space, and as soon as it's activated, then what happens is there's a suction, and once the suction is operating, what it's able to do is it's able to draw out anything which is in the client's energy body which actually is not meant to be there, that's actually meant to be released. So the two obvious examples is stage one, which is negative energy release. So with my particular practice, all negative energies are released into the vortex. We do this with love, which comes from me and the guides and the helpers, and off go the negative energies, and then when they come out the other end they arrive at their heaven. So that's a really beautiful process. The second one is curse removal. With curse removal, all the misuses of the power of the words, which we call curses, get externalized by the helpers onto spindles. The spindles spin and the curses fly up, disintegrating as they go from sentences into words, into letters, into mist, and again sucked up the vortex. So there's a photograph of negative energies being sucked up the vortex. There are other uses of the blue vortex, but what I want to do now is to take a little step away from the blue vortex and explain about vortex technology in general, which is something that fascinates me, because as soon as you leave behind our third dimensional reality, all travel is effectively mediated through a vortex process, which means that the object that's travelling is travelling in a large radius and it's travelling slowly, but as the radius gets tighter and tighter, what actually happens is that the speed increases exponentially until this traveller is moving so very fast that they move way beyond the speed of light, way beyond the speed of thought, and that's it, they're in the vortex. And when they come out the other end, they decelerate in the same way, so they're travelling way beyond anything we can imagine, and then gradually they decelerate out and they arrive in wherever they happen to be. So another particular vortex is a green vortex of a very particular colour, and this is a link point between the helpers Padema no Mancha, their home world, and the home world of the other two helpers. So there's instant transportation between those two planets by a very specialised green vortex. And what I've learnt this weekend is that the helpers, one of their major interests is developing vortex technology. So let me reiterate, vortex technology is endemic throughout the universe once you leave beyond the third dimension, and there are beings that are choosing to work on and develop these vortices. So for a long time it was me and the blue vortex, and that was it. And then along comes 2012 and the UGR, and with the UGR that was the first arrival of the white vortex. So all the stored emotions, when they are released from the client, they travel up into the white vortex, where they become transformed through fascinating processes which I had a chance to witness in great detail this week, as I did 2 UGRs in succession on 2 days. And what I was aware of very, very strongly is the fractal nature of the vortex, and I'll show you a picture to represent the fractal nature of the white vortex. And what you can see there is basically, if you've got like an imaginary microscope, as you zero in, as you zoom in closer and closer and closer, you can see this basic geometric form repeats and repeats and repeats and gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So when all the stored emotions end up in the white vortex, they are literally taken into this labyrinthine fractal world, and they get transformed into innocence. And so when the client then receives the big dose of innocence, which is a transformed stored emotions of grief, guilt, anger, rage and all the rest, then they return to the client's heart. They always go to the client's heart. Sometimes they reside there, sometimes they choose to create an extra layer around the client as an extra protection. Some clients seem to need this, so that is provided straightforwardly in that way. So this is the story of the white vortex. Now this summer I was shown the existence of 3 other vortex colours, specifically the red, the green and the purple, or better still I would like to call it the violet. So what happened is I was aware of these when I was working with people doing their USR training in Washington State in June, and nothing happened. Months went by, and very, very recently indeed I found myself in a situation. I was doing some work on my own and the red vortex came up. So here's a picture of the red vortex. Now, for all people who do the work that we do, the red vortex is a massive gift, and this is why. What really helps me is, first of all, I've got the wood burning stove, which gives me the sense of the fire and the heat and the red and the element of fire. And then I'll show you these pictures, series of pictures you can now see, different images of the red vortex. So this is what happens. Unlike with the blue, where the blue is manifested above and the parts which are to be released go up into it, this is a red vortex which appears and swallows me. Now when it swallows me, it always swallows all the guides and all the helpers, so we all get the benefit. And what we're doing is we're getting in touch very, very deeply with the fire elemental. And what the fire elemental does is it activates, nourishes and literally boosts the kinetic energy of us on a macro level, that's a corporeal level, on a cellular level, on a molecular level, on an atomic level and on a subatomic level. And whenever I go into the red vortex, within about 5 seconds I'm grinning all over my face because it feels just great. It's such a lovely feeling. So that's something I particularly enjoy. And really this is the reason for this film, because anyone who's trained as a USR practitioner, I commend to you this new vortex technology. All you need to do is look at some of these images you've seen on this film, and that will cue you in, journey into a safe place. And from your safe place you will see the red vortex and in you go. So now I'd like to talk about the green vortex. So the green vortex, the practice of the green vortex turned up pretty much at the same time as the red vortex. I was very curious about what was going to happen, and this is what did happen. So the green vortex manifested, and there was no sense of me being drawn into it. No, on the contrary, what was happening is out was pouring an absolute cornucopia of plant spirits, and I could recognise some of them like Mother A, for example, and many other what we would call herbs and vegetables that we eat on the planet Earth. But then very rapidly I became aware that there were plants of extraterrestrial origin coming out too. And so what happens is that when the green vortex is activated, you get the assistance of many plant spirits, a lot of whom I know nothing about other than I'm only just beginning to work with them. So if you feel that you would like some extra assistance when you're doing your work, whatever your work is, because the helpers are now just correcting my speech as it's coming out, they're making it very clear the green vortex is not just for USR graduates. This is for anyone who's drunk the plant spirit medicine, for anyone who's interested in the plants, has got a strong connection to plants. The suggestion is you tune in. Here are the images of the green vortex. You'll notice that there's 2 of them which actually are trees, which is particularly beautiful. So the green vortex is another modality which you can work with, and effectively what one is receiving is the intercession of the spirits of the plants. And those of us who've worked with plant medicine know this is one of the most powerful medicines on the planet, so much to be respected. And I'll speak about another vortex slightly humorously, but nonetheless I'll show you this film. This film is a money vortex. There are a lot of people out there that have issues around money. Some people have problems like I used to have about valuing myself, so I used to do everything to avoid asking for money because I felt very uncomfortable about it. And times change, and I actually did a lot of work with the spirit of money, and that transformed my life. So this is the money vortex. So the thing about the money vortex, the specific guidance I've received is as follows. What you do is you print off a copy of it, when you pin it up on the wall so that when you wake up in the morning you can see it there, then the other thing to do, I would suggest to you, is that tuning in to the vortex of money and then letting go of any desires. Completely contrary to what a lot of people are suggesting, isn't it? So completely let go of any desires at all and just enjoy the state of openness. So if anything, really I'm suggesting a state of not doing, a state of receptivity and a state of openness. And then you complete the whole thing by forgetting all about it and having no conscious awareness in your day. And that's the secret. And if you make use of this money vortex tool, you can be very pleasantly surprised about how your relationship to money starts to change. So there's one more thing they're going to throw in, which I particularly like, especially if you've got a shamanic interest. Then my suggestion is to do a journey, shamanic journey to the spirit of money. And here's the thing, you don't go to the spirit of money to ask for anything, you go to the spirit of money to give something. So you create in your active imagination a gift, and you take that gift and you give that gift freely to the spirit of money, expecting and asking for nothing. Job done. So those two will sort the money one. Let's move on. The violet vortex. I was made aware of this during the training in Washington State in June. No experience whatsoever until 2 to 3 days ago, and I was working on a client and then another client, and just before I did this work I tuned into the violet vortex for myself, and all I can really say at this time is that the violet vortex has got great gifts to give, and I haven't enough experience with the violet vortex to be able to lay it out nice and pat and easy with the words. So watch this space, there'll be more about the violet vortex to come. However, I'm mentioning it now because if you are a shaman, then you might want to consider doing a shamanic journey to meet the spirit of the violet vortex and see what you can find out for yourself. And if you come away with any interesting information, please email me on utshaman@yahoo.co.uk. I'll be very interested to hear your discoveries, and my discoveries will look out on another film. So the last vortex I'm going to mention is the black vortex. Now, at the last Plant Spirit Medicine retreat, there was one of the participants who didn't get any particular experience during the retreat. They then travelled a long way home. They arrived in home within about 30 minutes of arriving in home. They got the full Plant Spirit Medicine download, and one of the many things they received was the awareness that there is a black vortex. And they emailed me a little while later to say, please can you tell me anything about the black vortex? And the answer is not just yet, because what with doing the healing and doing the USR retreat and then doing the PSM retreat, there hasn't been time yet. And when I get time, then what I will do is I'll be doing more journeys to the violet vortex and to the black vortex to discover and learn and research. So here we are, this is the vortex challenge, and this is it. We suggest that if you are someone that does regular shamanic journeys, to do a specific series of research journeys to different vortexes of your imagination. Let's explore the peach pink vortex. I wonder what qualities might be to be found therein. Discover whether it's a vortex that you enter and spend a transformative experience inside, or is it one that you actually release other materials into? What way does it work? There are all sorts of possibilities, I'm sure, and I'm aware of that one of the participants on the USR training experienced a vortex whereby what it looked like was an endless series of feathers, and on the end of each feather there was an eye. And my suggestion is please do more journeys to this vortex, because you might learn something very valuable that we could all benefit from. So the sky's the limit as always, so explore, research and enjoy. Thank you very much for listening to this little film about vortexes. Thank you.